Hello, adorable charms. You're most welcome to Everything Literature, where you get to learn about everything concerning drama, prose, the most inspiring poetry. Take seats and enjoy the class. Once again, you're most welcome. My name is Olamide. I am a certified educationalist and also a literary analyst. I must say, a literary enthusiast. I love everything literature, everything about literature. I love it. Okay, so if you're new here, that means something about literature led you here. Do well to subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. You're the real deal. So here at Everything Literature, we get to explore the world of literature, talk about drama, prose, and poetry. Okay, without further ado, so let's delve into the class.
Our focus for today's class will be on poetry. Okay, so the first definition of poetry we're going to be looking at is this. Poetry is a composition that evokes emotions and imagination by the use of vivid, intense language, usually arranged in a pattern of words or lines with a regular repeated accent or stress. Now, this is more or less like a more technical definition, but the focus should be on the words emotions, imagination, and use of intense language. Okay? The second definition we would look at is this. Poetry is a composition that is characterized by special use of language and rhythm, rhymes, imagery, metaphor, symbol, onomatopoeia, meter, and various repetitions. So this second definition, one thing we have to point out again is that it has to do with special use of language. So poetry has to do with special use of language. The third one has to do with this. Poetry is the writing that formulates a concentrated, imaginative awareness of experiences chosen and arranged in a particular pattern to create specific emotional response through its meaning, sound, and rhythm. So this is more or less like a bit advanced definition. So it has to do with a concentrated imaginative awareness of experiences. So you need to take note of different things when you're talking about poetry in this instance. And when you take note of these different experiences, you make use of certain words and you arrange those words in certain manners or in particular patterns so that you can create specific emotional response. Now, by the time you're to create your response, one of the goals is that you want to achieve a particular meaning, you want to achieve a particular sound, and you want to achieve a particular rhythm. Most music, in most cases, can be classified as poetry in this instance. In this instance, music can be classified as poetry because there is a specific meaning, there is a specific sound, there is a particular rhythm or pattern, melody that comes to play. Okay. So the fourth definition we would look at today's class is this. Poetry is a literary genre that uses language in a special way by employing a lot of figurative expressions. So we still have the use of language in a special way, use of language in a special way, and this time around it employs something which is the figurative expressions. Another definition we would look at is this. It is a literary genre, that is, poetry is a literary genre that in line and metrical form, which is sharper in figurative language use and very economical in the amount of words used compared to other genres. So in this instance, we're saying poetry is a literary genre written in lines. Sorry, I omitted the word written at first. Written in lines and metrical form. And it also mixes of figurative language, and it's economical in the amount of words. So compared to prose, drama, poetry is quite economical, doesn't use a lot of words. We're not after having 1,000 words, since you're not writing a poem like Epic of Gilgamesh, or you're not trying to write the book of Psalms, something like that. Okay, so in most cases, poetry are usually short. If you count the number of words you can find in a poem, it may just be 10, it may just be 15, or 20, 30, and sometimes about 100 thereabout. Okay, so the last definition we'll take a look at for today's class is this. Poetry is a way. This time around, it's not just a composition, it's not just a writing, it's not just a literary genre. It's a way of expressing feelings, emotions, ideas, and other things that we experience, using language characterized by imagery and rhythmical sounds. I love this definition. Personally, I love this because it has to do with the fact that poetry, it's not just a kind of academic enterprise. It's our lives. It's something peculiar to our existence, okay? Because it's a way of expressing our feelings, our emotions, our ideas, what we experience in total. By the time someone is sad, there's a way you make use of poetry to express yourself. When you're happy, you make use of poetry as well. Okay, when God was to create the world, he made use of poetry. When science are to better conceptualize some certain things, they go into poetry. And even when doctors are to employ some extra medical approaches to the to hasten up the procedure of healing someone, they make use of poetry, like reading lullaby and like. So poetry is about a way. It's actually part of our existence. It's a way of life. It's intrigued into our veins and marrows. I'm sorry, I'm going personal on this now. Okay, so with this definition of poetry being established, you can remember poetry is a composition. It has to do with specific use of language. It's a way of life. It's a literary genre, and as a literary genre, as a way of life, as a writing, as a composition, it makes use of language in a figurative way, or should I say, in a special way, or in an imaginative way. And the purpose, the goal of writing poetry is actually to evoke emotions, to express our imagination, to make sure we are conscious or kind of create awareness of our experiences, and to make music out of the soul, for the soul, and for the benefit of beauty of mankind, so to say. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the class for today, and that would be to look at the characteristics or features of poetry. Okay, so what are the characteristics or features of poetry from all that we've said in the definition? So poetry is imaginative. That's the first one. Poetry is rhythmical or metrical in form. By the time we get fully into the analysis of a poem, you understand what we mean by the metrical nature of poetry. Poetry is reflective. That is, it reflects experiences. That is the third one. The next one is that poetry is rich in figures of speech or figurative use of language. Poetry arouses emotion. That's part of the features of poetry. It should arouse emotions. And it implies the use of lines, verses in stanza. So poetry is actually written in stanza. By the time we get into the next class, you understand better what I'm talking about, the use of lines and verses in stanza. So poetry also makes use of repetitive sounds, especially similar sounds like when we intend to achieve alliteration, assonance, consonance, parallelism, sometimes. Okay, poetry implies we have a concept called poetic license. That is, sometimes it allows for what we call grammatical distortion. Okay, like a concept, a technique called inversion. We will get to see that later. Inversion has to do with you just twist the syntactic structure or the way you're supposed to arrange a word. Instead of saying something like "I am a boy," I am, something like that. So poetry also encourages that, and it's more or less like a poetic license. We have deeper aspects into what we mean by poetic license, but when we get into the advanced part of it. Okay, and the last one we'll take a look at, which has to do with the features of poetry, is this. Poetry uses concentrated, or should I say condensed language, and it is economical in the amount of words it uses. Beep. I hope you were able to learn one or two things from today's class, and if there's any parts you find it difficult to understand, please do well to leave notes in the comment section. Let me get to know what you think about it. And I would advise that you watch the video more than once, okay? And with that, you get to cement the knowledge. I'm gonna see you later in our next class. Stay safe.